It's a new day here in the shop, and I'm wearing my Overland shirt, so I'm going to work on the Overland. It just seems fitting that way. I have to get the AC compressor changed out on this thing. Flip here. On a warranty claim, actually. It is a brand new compressor, and you can see this plate is old from the last compressor. This is where it was leaking previously. But I've replaced everything else in the system. New lines, the dryer is new, condenser is new, the evap core is new, all the O-rings are new for the whole thing. So I put a new compressor on it so it'll be working. And it has already failed after using it for about a day. I'm gonna get that out of here. And then I think we're gonna work on a tire carrier, special project in the rear. So I'll do the boring stuff and then we'll get to the fun stuff. All right, now that I got the AC compressor in, I'm going to get this ZR2 Blazer tire carrier mounted up to the WJ. This is something that a few people have done in the past, but there's really not a lot of information on it. So I'm going to do a lot of documenting as I go along building this. And I've played with it a little bit, and I've got a little bit of a plan formed. And so now I'm going to start recording and finishing this out. So I've got a couple holes drilled up here already. I've got these bolts. They're just through the hole. They're not actually bolted on the back side. And I aligned that exactly with the taillight, as you can see there. So the taillight is still going to be removable out of this hole. And then I removed this bracket. Hold it the right way. I removed this bracket here because with both of these brackets, I've seen it done before, but on my particular Jeep, or I guess this particular tire carrier, if I have both brackets, I won't be able to get the taillight out without removing this whole thing. So I've got this undone, and I'm going to actually just use a bushing. The bushings here, I've got some collars that sit inside here, kind of like shocks, and I'm going to use a bolt and use this as a spindle, and I'm going to weld it to a piece that comes up in here. This is also something I've seen somebody else do before. The way I don't like what they did is they only put a bracket right here and a bracket right here with nothing in the middle. So what I'm going to do to start mine is I've got this piece that I've cut. You can see a bunch of slots cut in it so I could bend it. And this is all out of 3/16, which is standard thickness for bumpers, like off-road bumpers and stuff. So it ought to be good here. And you can see I've got this curved and fitted on that left side there to match this panel really well. So I'm going to weld this into its shape like this, and then off of that we're going to do some sort of reinforcement brackets this way to come out to the spindle, and I want a C shape over the spindle so that it's got top and bottom contact. I'm going to grease it on both areas and put washers and everything. I wanted to find some roller bearings to put in here, but then I think that'll just be an extra point of failure. So the collar that goes in the middle is going to actually just be a little bit taller so that when I tighten the nuts down, it's not actually squeezing this bushing. It's just right above it. And then, like I said, reinforcement bars coming up to here and then straight back. And then there's going to be bracing here, bracing this way. And then I'm going to drill through, and on the back side, on the inside, I'm going to put another bracing plate so it's sandwiching the body instead of relying on the body. So that ought to make it nice and strong. And then same thing up here on the inside, it's going to have a bracing plate that comes all the way across and has nuts welded to it, so I can just do the bolts from the outside, and the backing plate will sandwich the body in instead of relying on this thin sheet metal to hold everything up. And of course, same over here. I'd like to make a piece that wraps all the way around, but I don't know if that's feasible or not. So there's for sure going to be one piece that goes pretty far, probably a couple inches further each direction. And it's going to be a little bit overkill, but that's a good thing. These 33s on these steel wheels are not light. And I'd really hate to do all this work and then rip the quarter panel out. So we're going to do that. And then get this mounted up, and then once this whole system is working, and of course I guess I'll come over here This is going to have the wrong bolt pattern because this is the S10 bolt pattern, which is like a 5 on 4.75. It's ridiculous. The S10s and like some of the old Camaros and stuff are like the only things that ever use this silly bolt pattern. But so I'm going to have to drill out some holes to make this the correct bolt pattern, which there's already some extra holes. I'm sure it's just a mirror of this, but I'll make a new hole pattern for the 5 on 5, which I have some wheel spacers I can use to get the pattern. And then once everything's there and I put the tire on the carrier and make sure that the weight's going to hold and everything, make sure that it's level, then I'll come here and start dealing with the latch. The latch is going to have to be last, so that way with all the weight on it and the way this is going to swing and everything, I know it's going to hit exactly in the correct spot every single time. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So there's a lot to do, and then of course painting it when it's all done. And this I think is going to have to shrink in, because if this is sticking out that far with my wide tires, it's going to be way out there. But lots to do, but I'm starting down here. I want to get this spindle mount started and finished up hopefully today. So I'm going to, wherever I put it, there it is. I'm going to get this piece, and I'm going to weld all this up over here. So we'll get all of this welded up so that this is a nice sturdy piece in its current shape. And then once that cools off, because that's going to make that super hot, I'll get that drilled and bolted in, and we will go from there. All right, I've got my bracket in here. It's loosely, it's just finger tight, but I've got it all welded. You can see the penetration through there. I got 3 really good sized bolts in each side, and I really like that the plate comes all the way through, and then I can brace it across like this, and that's going to be really, really rigid. And you can see on this side, I've got the, well, you can barely see it in there. I've got a backing plate that the bolts go through, so this is sandwiched right here. It's not just into the bodywork. And if I look up in here this way, oh, you might be able to just see in there the backing plate, so that'll be nice and strong. There's already 2 pieces of bodywork that are welded together right here, so you can see that's almost as thick as my plate is, so I think that's going to be okay since there's a sheet weld all the way through here. This one is a little bit bent for me because my Jeep apparently has been rear-ended, or at least backed into something, so when I tighten this, it's going to smush it and bring it square, I think. But I'm going to tighten this up, and then I can start working on, I think I'm going to make the piece that holds the spindle first, and then I'll cross brace it, so that way my braces will brace to the spindle here instead of the spindle having to work around the braces. I think that'll be a better design. So I'm going to get all these tightened up and then start thinking about how that's going to go, and I will report back what I end up doing. Alright, so getting to the back side of these 2 holes on the inside is actually kind of a chore. It's pretty far back in here, and the only place you can reach your whole arm is like way up here. I can reach to about here comfortably, and then getting to there is it's kind of a stretch. So I tack welded my nuts onto the retainer plate. That's the 3/16 like everything else. And then I just tack welded this little thin piece that I had laying around as kind of a flag nut. So that way I can reach in and hold it right there while somebody else bolts this in from the outside. So I'm going to give that a try. I should be able to reach it pretty good now. And then once this is bolted in fairly securely, I can start working on the spindle mount. Well, I think that's going to be all I'm working on today. I'm pretty happy with the progress so far. I've got this bolted in pretty much completely, so I don't think I'm going to be messing with that anymore. My bracing here is still pretty hot. I'm going to try not to touch it, but got the angle iron welded in here for the main support. I've got a piece of Schedule 40 on the inside to keep it from twisting too much. And then I'm still going to brace off the edges of it to just totally take out the twisting out of the equation. It really doesn't do all that much right now, and I can put my full weight on this thing. You can see here, So if it can hold me, it's going to hold a 33 no problem. And I just got to do the rest of the bracing on that and finish welding, and then just clean it up and make it look a little bit nicer so that it looks like a complete product. And then I'm going to have to make a 5-on-5 wheel fit on here, which should not be that difficult. That should actually be pretty quick, just drill some holes. And then make up the latch system. So for today, I'm really happy with the progress, and the next time I'll work on this, I think, is going to be the day that we finish this thing up. So I guess for you guys, it'll just be a couple of seconds, but for me, it's going to be a few days before we come back to this one. All right, I'm back onto this. I'm doing a little bit of work. Got the taillight out, just enough space to do that, so I'm happy about that. It's a little tricky to get that ball socket out, but it always is. I did some welding. I got the support welded in right here, and that keeps this whole thing from flexing at all. I did a lot of welding right here to round that off and weld all the way around, so that's got good penetration. I put a weld down the inside of that. I don't think I need to do any more. And then I took all the bolts out, put silicone behind them, and ground this down just enough to be flush with that body line, so I won't have to worry about the hatch hitting it. So now I can tighten up this hinge bolt, and then I can spray, oh, I guess I have to cut these off, but all of this can be painted over here. So I got to cut these studs off. I could drilled my holes already for the 5-on-5 bolt pattern, and I did that using a spacer I have over there, but these are actually welded on the backside from GM, not just pressed in. You can see that there. So I'm just going to cut them flush right here. I'll put some studs through here and weld them on. I actually already have them there that were left over. So I'll put them on there. We'll weld them in both sides, and then we'll set the wheel up here and start working on the latch. All right, we got the tire sitting on the carrier here, and I went ahead and started painting some of the stuff that's all totally complete and finished. So that way tomorrow when I come back to this, all this will be painted, and I can just come and trim the bumper, put the taillight in here, be done with that side. I do still have to do the latch mechanism into the hatch. I have this here, so I wasn't scratching the hatch up too bad. I realized that a little too late, but if I open this to the stop right there, you can shut the hatch. You can see it cleared. Perfect. I'll give you a sneak peek of what this is starting to look like. It's coming together pretty good. I'm really happy with this. So tomorrow I'm going to finish up the latch, or start and finish. I'm going to do the latch. I got to put the taillight back in, put the bumper on, and we got to pull this thing outside and see what it really looks like. All right, it's another day working on this thing, and today I'm finishing it up. So I got the bumper put on and trimmed right here while I'm waiting on some stuff I welded to cool off. It looks like a pretty aggressive cut, like you got to cut really far, which I guess you kind of do. But you got to remember the taillight covers almost all of it. So I'm about to put the taillight in right now, but I wanted to show the trim before I threw the taillight back on it. And I could have trimmed this bolt down a little bit too. It's kind of sticking down far, but bumper fit, well, my bumper is also trashed, and it never fit upright anyways. So this is about as close as it was before, which is good. So I'm going to throw the taillight in. And then currently I'm working on the latch over here. So I cut this piece off, the part that actually latches in. I cut that off of the Blazer bracket, I guess is what it would be. It's just got a couple welds on the edges, really easy to cut through. And I'm creating my own mounts for the tailgate. I've seen where people have trimmed those and made them fit, but I don't love the way they look. So I'm starting with this, making a spacer, which is what's cooling over there. And then I'm going to have a wide plate that the spacer bolts to, which is going to bolt through the tailgate to another wide plate so that it sandwiches like everything else. And then wherever these land, we just have to adjust them. You can see they're easily adjustable, and then you just tighten down the jam nuts. That's the same for both of them. So Just got to tighten them to where they hold snug against the body, and I'm gonna try to reinforce where these hit too, but the most important part is where this lands. So I'm gonna get the tail light in and get to working on all of these brackets, and then I will update with what I get done. All right, looking up on the inside of the hatch, I had to make my backing plate a little bit smaller because of this flange right here, but I've got some thick washers on this one and the one that's underneath. The one in there is really tricky to get, but that's a nice backing plate there. And then if we come outside, you can see here's the bracket. It's very stout now that it's got the backing plate in it. I'm still gonna have to trim this piece to fit in here. That's got to go up in there. But anyways, I'll get to that in a minute. And I'm gonna have to run wires for the license plate lights over here. I think I'm just gonna tag the parking light wire out of the tail light and then come out from underneath it right there along this bar. But for now, we've got this really solid mounted. Now I'm going to have to adjust the bumpers. I don't know that this is actually going to be able to reach without extending the threads here, which means I'd get another nut and weld it to the backside, because it starts to contact right about there, and if you can look in there, the threads are basically all the way out. But those bumpers are what are going to keep it from rattling back here. And then this one just has no chance of reaching in that small of a gap. I thought about welding a plate off of this to come and capture that, but I think coming and just hitting the body right there is going to be good. But overall, this is looking really, really nice. So I'm going to get the tire on there, and that should be the final mounting for the tire. And then I will get to work on the bumper stops. All right, other than the license plate and the license plate lights, this thing is done. I have the tire mounted up, as you can see. I put some extra long studs on here in case I end up getting some thick aluminum wheels. I'll still have plenty of thread engagement on here. It is pretty close to the body for a tire carrier on a WJ. I could have brought this in quite a bit, but I decided not to mess with it again in case I get a different set of wheels down the road that aren't so wide for some reason. See, I've got the top bumper up against there, the bottom one, oh my gosh, there we go. The bottom one, I found I had a threaded rod that was the same thread pitch, and then I used a shock bushing, the metal sleeve inside the bushing to extend that, because it really doesn't need to be all that strong, it just needs to press up against the body. So got that on there. You can see it's fairly rigid. And then he just works like normal. I put a stop on it so it'll hold itself open. Start refocusing there. So it'll hold itself open like this as long as I'm on flat ground. I think I'm going to end up adding maybe a little piece off of here with a pin in it, or maybe, I don't know yet. I got to figure out some sort of a pin lock so I can lock this thing open, especially for camping and stuff. I'd love to put a swing out tabletop thing right here, or drop down tabletop. So if I'm going to do that and camp out of this thing, I need to put some sort of a pin or some sort of a lock on this. But that's down the road. You've already seen this. You've already seen the inside. And the last step is to get this thing fitted up. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to do quite a bit of trimming in this area where I've already scuffed it up, because I think it'll fit behind here barely, but this latch, this vertical piece, is going to interfere with this quite a bit. So I'm going to start cutting slowly away at this once I get a measurement on how far back that goes into there. But being that that's just cosmetic, all the mechanical work is done. I can close this, latches right up, I'm pretty happy. All right, as you can see, we got the Jeep pulled out of the shop. We got everything finished up on the tire carrier. So I'm gonna take you around, show you the final product, at least for a little while here. And that's gonna be it for this video. So let me show you around. All right, so you can see for now, I just got my license plate zip tied on. I'm eventually gonna build a bracket that has license plate lights and have the wires run down into the bumper there. And then they'll go up behind the tail light and through that grommet and attach to the parking lights that are back in there. So then that'll be all legal. But for now, that's gonna be fine. You can see the bed liner that I put on here. You can see a little bit right there, some of the silicone that's in the holes to help waterproof that. I put some on the holes themselves and then on the bolt threads of a couple of the early ones, and whatever got smushed out. So that should be nice and watertight. Same with this bolt in here. All of these down here go through the body down and below. The bumper is fitted up as good as it's going to get because this bumper is kind of beat up from hitting the tire when I've been off-roading. You can see the tire marks a little bit right there where it's all black, and you can see the cracking in the paint. But there's how close the mount fits up to the body. It's pretty good. Like I said, I could have moved this tire closer to the tire carrier, but I decided in case I get wheels in the future that don't have such a crazy offset, then I'm going to want that extra little bit of space. Plus, that's going to be good. I think I'm going to move my CB mount up into here to come out behind the tire and eliminate this point right here where it can get snagged, especially this wire being directional like that. But go ahead and come around to this side. The tire carrier, it's rigid on there. It's really good. You can see how it fits into the cutting I had to do into this plastic piece. See, the bumper on top is touching, the bumper on bottom is touching. And then just reach in here. There's plenty of space to get your hand. Just pull the latch. Swings right open. It's got to stop so that it can hang out. You can see the license plate went with it. Here's a closer look at how I trimmed this. A lot of people take this trim all the way up and over, or I've seen it this cut all the way in half. I trimmed as minimally as possible just to get it to fit, for no other reason than that's just how it fit. It's not going to be pretty, but I don't care about that. The plate for the bracket right there, all painted up, bolted in, all grade 8 hardware. Hatch opens right up. See, I got the interior put back together. It's dirty and this needs to be reorganized, but overall, that's all there is to it. I can shut the hatch. Close that, and I'm going to be careful not to be letting that slam into the hatch, well, especially because I'm pointed downhill right now. But I don't want that slamming into the hatch because I think eventually long term that's going to have a pretty bad effect on it. But if you let it close reasonably, then it's rigid. And driving up here, I hit a couple of the rough spots in the yard, and it's actually a lot more stout than some of the other aftermarket tire carriers I've had on like the A-frames on the bumper. So I am super happy with the way this turned out. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate that. I hope this is helpful for if you guys want to put a stock looking tire carrier onto your WJ. I know personally I hate almost every single rear aftermarket bumper on these things. Well, I guess front and rear. A lot of the aftermarket bumpers either don't look very good or they cost almost $2,500 or if not more. So this is a great option, I think, to get the tire outside of the trunk and you get your trunk space back. But anyways, if you want to see more WJ content or any of the other projects that I have laying around out here, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.